honestly think even though Windows has predominant market share, even Windows users don't like Microsoft. They don't like that Windows has that market share. They don't like that they've handed the keys to the kingdom for all intents and purposes to one company, and that the anti-I'll protect you from Big Brother company outdoes that company. I don't think the average end user is that stupid. I think they realize that, and I think, and the other thing is, there's a little secret. The manufacturers don't like it either. The problem is they have to sell their product to the end user, and the end user lives in the real world, not utopia. So when we get to the threshold you're talking about where, well, you know, why we're reinventing the wheel anyways, let's fix this problem that's been the vein of our existence for the last 30 years, is honestly the mentality I see the industry taking. It's... I see the traditional business model losing out big time there, just because it has become the vein of the existence. It's hurt the industry's ability to innovate and grow and do things.
Yeah, I hope so, certainly. And my follow-up question for you was, okay, so if we do see Linux becoming popular, is it going to be Linux that we're going to see in stores, and oh, I use Linux, and hey, check out this new great, you know, thing called Linux that everyone's going to, you know, start using? It's going to get starting to advertise, or
nope.
Is it going to be Ubuntu? Are we going to see Ubuntu in stores and Ubuntu advertising, people talking about Ubuntu?
Ubuntu will be first, but there will be others. There will be there will be others soon after.
I don't go against that and say instead Android might be the one, because it's already there. I mean, it's not intended for everyday desktop use, but for grandma can use Android.
Well, okay. By that logic, then I should change my answer. I should say it'll be Chromium, followed by Ubuntu, followed by Android, followed by others.
And depending on the software that comes for it, Migo actually has a really good shot too.
Yeah, I just don't think Migo's going to get there before those three.
Right.
But that's why I said followed by others. There's a lot primed to do that right now.
Yeah.
They're just lining up. It's one of those behind the scenes thing. Unless you're a geek keeping track of all of this, you don't realize is going on. It's the grandma will know about it when they see it in the Best Buy. But those type of deals, it's not, I wake up one morning and decide I'm going to add a new OS to the mix in the retail markup. It's, we talk about it, and when we get together, and then we get lined up with OEMs and manufacturers and so on and everything else, and the thing takes 2 to 10 years to get going. But the work on that's already started with multiple platforms and other things. Actually, I think they showed some systems for that kind of stuff at CES actually this year. They were in the category of systems we're not sure we're going to make, but which is a whole bunch of stuff at CES. But there more and more of that stuff showing up, and you have. I mean, the fact that you have Lenovo doing a computer that's half Linux, half Windows, that's intended for retail sale and is being produced, it's almost like the industry's trying to seed Linux right now. Like, they desperately want it seeded because they don't want to deal with Windows anymore, and they don't. I wish everyone luck and success with that.
You guys, this is just kind of me throwing something out there, but Adobe is kind of taking more of a liking to, I don't know if I could say Linux, but certainly Android. So, do you think it's possible that we're going to see Photoshop on Linux because of that? Because they're kind of, Mac is kind of pushing them away a bit, and
Not immediately. The order that has to happen in is retail Linux systems have to be being sold. When retail Linux systems are being sold, then it's not just people like us who are geeks calling Adobe going, Adobe, when are you going to get it through your head? It's average people who know nothing about computers. I would argue that there's a growing Linux base that's those people, because I've turned I've turned about 50 people like that onto Linux, and they love it. I don't know what other people are doing, but in the eyes of Adobe right now, there isn't a retail Linux market. So when there's a retail Linux market, yeah, I don't see that being that hard because of what you're talking about. But that's one of the things I'm a little worried about Chromium. I'm hoping Chromium stays in its current incarnation, so stuff that's made for Chromium will work for other Linux distros. What I'm a little afraid of will happen here is it will get so proprietized that you have to develop per distro, which would be a bad thing. An extreme amount.
Well, I thought that it was. I mean, as far as I know, RPMs and devs aren't really that different. Right?
As far as I know, they really aren't that different. No, they're just.
I mean, you know anything? I don't see why it would. Like, I know that Ubuntu is trying to change GNOME and stuff, but yeah, I don't see why that would really happen. Why it would get so hard? I think that it's that there's a lot of separation between RPM and dev. I'm wondering, like, and I know people have been trying to do this for a really long time, but I mean, getting something that works on everything, that isn't just a bash install script.
Well, no, it's like honestly, if you build as far as I understand it, and correct me if I'm wrong, Jordan, and you're a programmer, James, so you correct me if I'm wrong. As far as I understand it, you can compile the binary into whatever kind of installer you want. Can't you?
You can compile the source code.
I mean, the source code into whatever you want. So if they do their job right with the source code, and the architecture of Linux stays largely like it is now, the same source code could be compiled into, even if we wind up with 7 different installers, it could be compiled into all of them. And that Adobe would have to make one source code and then just compile it.
It still causes problems, having a bunch of different ones. I mean, what I'm seeing, what I'm probably going to, I would like to see. I mean, I know there's Alien, but does anyone know how good Alien works for converting debs to RPMs?
I've never used it. Have you ever used it, Jordan?
I've used it to go RPM to deb, but not deb to RPM. And what I've heard of it in the past, actually Commodore 256, who watches these videos, will attest that the Fedora people are not terribly friendly toward using Alien.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I would like to see, because what I'm going to see is I think that companies will really make stuff for debs, because as far as I know, deb is a lot popular for desktops, because I mean, Ubuntu is the most popular desktop one, and then you got Linux Mint, which is the 3rd most popular, and they both use debs. So,
well, I would argue that those are both Ubuntu. It's like they should really be considered. At the end of the day,
yeah, Debian's pretty popular.
Yeah, Dev's pretty popular. It's as long as it stays under 3, I don't think it's that much extra work to just, okay, we're going to do 2. It's like, do both RPM and Dev. Where I see there being a problem is if we get more than that. If somebody goes and creates a third one and a fourth one and a fifth one,
well, as long as the source code is available, the rest of the distros, most of them will do it themselves. Like Arch would have it before most other distros would.
Well, no, but see, okay, that is
you have to have the source.
You have to have the source, and that's the thing. I don't ever see Adobe going, here is the source for our Creative Suite. Does anybody ever see that happening, ever? That's never going to happen. It's not gonna. I
believe it might be possible to package up a binary. That way, they wouldn't have to give out any of the actual source.
Well, no. That's the thing. That's what I mean. Like, if that's why I was saying, can't you recompile the binaries?
Well, you don't really recompile it. You just package it to work on whatever distro.
Okay.
I think. I'm not familiar enough with packaging. I've only done it on Foresight Linux, and that was primarily just taking the source and putting it into a Python script and having it do all that. But it did also work with binaries. So it's entirely possible that I'm off base.
Well, no, see, that's what I'm wondering, if you couldn't do that, if you couldn't write like some type of Python script that basically acts as an installer and runs the binary, and then
there are a lot of apps that have, say, like a .run or a .sh file, and it detects whatever distro you're on and figures it out.
Right. It's like, that's the route I see working for commercial stuff, where they don't want to release the source and let the open source community do all the work for them.
Stuff like that has been tried with stuff like CNR.
Okay.
Where it's kind of one thing, and every distro will download a version of it, and then they could all download the same package, and the version of the, interpreter kind of thing that they download for their distro will know how to interpret that package exactly for their distro. But, CNR didn't get popular, so I don't know how can get popular for that. So.
Well, yeah, but that model would work well for closed source software distributing in the open source environment of Linux. If they put in a little bit of work they need to for that.
Mm-hmm. Well, have you guys seen CNR?
No.
Yes.
Have you, Jordan? Why don't you think it got popular?
I think it was on an obscure distro, and they tried to bring it into Ubuntu, but Ubuntu's using the Debian base, it already worked well enough, and they said, why don't we just do it ourselves? Honestly, if I knew more about the behind-the-scenes stuff, I'd of course be more informed, but I don't know. The OpenSUSE uses a one-click installer that's similar to Click and Run, and I don't know, it's sort of hit or miss in my experience. I tried the OpenSUSE one-click installer, and it was actually more like a 7-click installer, so...
You want to be careful about one click, because...
Yeah, you don't say one click, because one click, you click it once, and the whatever browser you're in has to figure it out.
It wasn't Alan. Alan's doing the other stupid, but somebody actually patented the idea of one click. I forget who that was. That was like a big. That was another.
Amazon.
I think it was actually. To be honest,
I know Amazon has a one-click purchase kind of thing, which is scary.
Okay, yeah, that might have been them. I don't know. Boy, we got off on a really interesting tangent here. It's a lot more interesting than Captain Linux sucks. But no, all this stuff is relevant and valid, and this is really Linux's Achilles heel right now, to be quite honest. We're talking about stuff that... Yeah, go ahead.
Do you think something like CNR should be run back?
I think a way to get that to work with both Deb and RPM should be done.
Well, there's actually been several projects in the past to try to create a universal binary system, something that would, or a universal package format, not a binary, but something that would work across all platforms, and traditionally all the platforms rail against it.